In the last lesson, I showed you how to move the player with the Rigidbody component, but we were moving our player only left to right and right to left. And now I would like to show you how to move the player in all 4 directions. I have left our bullet prefab and the script that we attached to it so that we can use it today. And I have player movement script which is empty at the moment, so we are going to fill it in. Let's create our player. So I will just right click and create empty. I'll call it player. Now I'm going to import some graphics I found on Pixabay. So I right click in the project window and choose import new asset. And here I've got a spaceship that I would like to import. Now I click on the player object and add component. We want to display this sprite that we just imported, so I will use sprite renderer. I click on it and just attach our sprite to this field, and here we have it. The next thing we need to do is to attach Rigidbody component. So just add component and start typing Rigidbody 2D. And now we need to attach our player movement script to the object. So add component. I just delete whatever I wrote and I click on scripts, and here we have a player movement, so it's attached straight away. I think that our player is a bit too big, so I will just scale it down to 0.5. I'll save it and let's open our script so that we can make our player move. In order to move our player, we're going to need 2 variables responsible for moving horizontally and moving vertically. They both are going to be of type float, so just give a type first and then give a name for the variable, move x. We are not going to assign any value to it just yet. Let's create another one, so float, and let's call it move y. If we are doing 2 variables or more of the same type, we might just declare them in a different way. Instead of repeating float and putting another name beneath, we can just go back to the same line and just using a comma just add another variable. That's the same, and this is a bit shorter. Okay, we have our 2 variables defined, so let's go to our update method where we are going to check the input from the user. So let's just start typing update and just press tab so that it gets filled in, and now we're going to get some input. So we are going to use move x first and then assign to it input get axis. I'm going to use get axis row, but you can use get axis as well. We were talking about them, what's the difference, so you should know it already. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to give an axis name, which is horizontal. Semicolon at the end. And now I want to add another line for move y variable. So instead of typing everything again, I'll just use duplicate function with our shortcut, which is Shift Alt and arrow down. I'll change the name of horizontal to vertical, and I'll change move x to move y. I'll save it. So we've got our input ready. Now we have to move our player. So beneath, we're going to add fixed update function. As I mentioned before, we are using fixed update for everything that is connected with the physics, and the Rigidbody is a component responsible for physics, so we are going to use it. So fixed update, tap, and it's get autofilled, and here we want to get into the Rigidbody component that we attached to our object. So in order to do it, we have to make a reference to it, and this time I'll show you another way how to make a reference. Before, we've done it this way, that I've created the Rigidbody 2D variable and gave it a name RB, and then in start method we are doing a reference by get component, and then we added the component name and parentheses. So this is pretty much done. But there is another way without using the start method. So we just delete it now, or maybe I will comment it out. We know that we can do double slash, and this is one line comment, but if we want to comment out like 3 lines and more, we might use just / and the star, and then at the end we'll do it in opposite direction, so star and /. And this is called a block comment, like so. So now instead of using get component method to get that component, we are going to use serialize field, like we did it before with the prefab. So now if we go back to Unity and click on our player, we can see that here in the script we've got a field that is expecting a rigid body component. So we can just drag and drop it to that field, and that is a bit maybe shorter and easier way of doing it. You have to remember about, dragging and dropping it to that field, and sometimes I do forget about it, so that's why I prefer to do it this way. But if you sometimes try to assign some other object component to different object, this is a really good way of doing it. Much shorter, much easier, and much quicker. Okay, let's get back to our script. We've got our rigid body sorted, so now let's go to fixed update and continue. Our rigid body component is called RB, and then we want to move our player with the velocity. So after the dot we are just typing velocity, and now it equals to some new vector. Vector 2 or vector 3, it's up to you. I'm using vector 2. Vector 2 is accepting the x and y value. So for the x value, we will just get move x variable, and for the y value, move y variable. And this is done. But as you can remember, or if you don't, let's just have a look into our Unity, how our spaceship is behaving. So I will just press play, and as you can see we are dropping down a bit, but if I go up and to the right we are going, so everything seems to be working, apart of that we are falling down. If you like it, leave it as it is. If you don't, change the gravity scale to 0, and I'm going to do it because I don't want it to be dropping. And as you saw, we are moving very slow. So let's get back to our script and increase the speed value. Let's declare this value on the top, so we can just use comma and add speed. So now we have to multiply our vector by the speed variable. We have to specify what's the speed value. We might specify it straight away in here, so just give an equal sign and add like 12f. Just save it, go back to Unity and press play. Now we are going quite fast and I like it, but I don't know if you remember it. When we're going to the sides and up and down, it's okay, but when we press the right button and top button at the same time, so we are going on the angle, we are going too fast. This is definitely faster than horizontal and vertical movement, so you have to normalize our vector. So just go back, and after the vector just press dot and start typing normalized. So now it should be all fine. Go back to Unity, press play, and now we are seeing that the value of the speed is constant. And this is what we wanted to achieve really. At the end, let's add the shooting functionality, so we have our movement script pretty much ready, so you can use it in any game you want to create. So let's go back to the script, and in update method we want to check for the input. So if input get button down, and now we have to provide the name of it, which is fire1. Then we want to instantiate the bullet, but I don't really want to do it this way as we've done it last time. I want to create another function. We can just take a look how the function is structured, and based on it we will create our own. So let's have a look. There is a void keyword. This is a type of the function because it doesn't return anything. So let's go down and just copy it, void, and then let's give it some name. We want to shoot a bullet, so let's just call it shoot. Give a parenthesis, as you can see it above, exactly the same, and now we have to add curly bracket. So let's just add it, and our function body is ready. So now within that function we want to create that functionality so that we can start shooting. In order to do it, we have to create another field so that we can make a reference to our prefab. So we'll do exactly the same as we did with Rigidbody. So let's just go down, add serialized field. It will be of type GameObject, and let's call it bullet prefab. Now go down, and here we are going to create a new GameObject. So just start typing GameObject with the capital letter, call it a bullet, and assign to it a function that is going to instantiate a new prefab to the scene. What prefab we want to instantiate? The one that we just created, which was called bullet prefab. And now what location are we going to instantiate? This will be the location of our player. In the future we would have to change it, but at the moment this is totally fine, so just leave it as it is. So just say GameObject, transform, and position. After the comma we just add the quaternion identity, which means we don't want to change any rotation of it. So this is pretty much done. Our new function is ready to be used, but this is not executed yet. We have to execute it in our conditional statement, which says that whenever we press the left mouse button, then this shoot function should be executed. So just call it like we call the variable. Just give it a name, and at the end we have to add parentheses, and that's it. It's just that simple. So let's go back to the Unity, and there is one thing we have to do. As you can see, there is a new field for bullet prefab. So now just drag and drop it, save the file, and press play. Now if we shoot it, you can see that new bullets are created and they go to the right side. And because on the bullet script there is a method that is destroying the bullet after 5 seconds, they will be destroyed after that time. Okay, this is it for this lesson. The last thing I would like to tell you is that if you go under this movie and every movie that you are going to watch later on, there is a script on Google Drive that you can have a look. There will be the code snippets for every lesson, and there will be a Google Drive folder where you can get into and grab some packages for each lesson. So if you're not able to follow the lesson, you can just download it, import to your project, and see how it's working.